The wrong continent. 6 tons of rock. Wrong country. For 100 years. At the center of Stonehenge lies a stone everyone walked past for generations, half buried under 2 sarcens that fell across it centuries ago. They call it the Altar Stone. For over 100 years, every textbook said the same thing about where it came from: Wales. In 2024, a team tested this one stone alone for the first time in the monument's history, using mineral grains too small to see without a microscope. The match came back wrong. Not Wales, Northeastern Scotland, 750 kilometers away, across some of the roughest coastline and terrain in Britain. This is not speculation. The lab work is published in Nature, and it leaves one question with no clean answer. How do you move 6 tons of rock that far, 4,500 years ago, with no wheels built for the load and no metal tools to speak of? The century-old assumption. Stonehenge sits on Salisbury Plain, 90 miles southwest of London, flat farmland in every direction. That is part of why the stones look so wrong the moment you see them. Nothing around them explains how they got there. The outer ring is sarsen stone, blocks up to 25 tons each, hauled from Marlborough Downs about 20 miles north. That part, at least, always made a kind of sense. Inside that ring stand the blue stones, smaller, up to 4 tons, and those came from the Preseli Hills in Wales, 140 miles away. Already a serious haul for people working without wheels rated for that kind of weight. And then there is the altar stone, 6 tons of sandstone, lying flat at the exact geometric center of the monument, made of completely different material from every other stone in the circle. It does not match the sarcens. It does not match the blue stones. It never did. In 1923, a geologist named Herbert Thomas walked the Preseli Hills and matched several of the smaller blue stones to a specific outcrop there. Careful work for its time, and it became the origin story for the entire monument. Every stone at Stonehenge got filed under that same explanation, including the altar stone, without anyone ever running an independent test on the altar stone itself. This was not a cover-up. Nobody buried a finding. Nobody hid a report in a drawer. It was simpler than that, and in some ways more damning. One geologist solved one part of the puzzle in 1923, and for the next 100 years, everyone assumed the rest of the puzzle followed the same answer. Textbooks repeated it. Museum placards repeated it. Documentaries repeated it. Nobody went back and checked the one stone that actually sat at the center of the whole structure. But there was a problem. Nobody had ever run the altar stone's own mineral signature. Not in the 1920s. Not in the decades after, when geology moved on to methods Thomas never had access to. The Welsh answer just sat there, unquestioned, because it was close enough to feel settled, and because nobody had a reason to doubt a 100-year-old finding from a respected geologist. That is how an assumption becomes fact. Not through fraud, through silence. In 2024, a new team decided to test the altar stone by itself, separate from the blue stones, for the first time in the monument's recorded history. The match. Nobody expected. Inside the altar stone are tiny mineral grains: zircon, apatite, and rutile. Each one is barely visible, smaller than a grain of sand, and each one crystallized at a specific place and a specific point in geological time, sometimes hundreds of millions of years before the stone itself was ever quarried. The age pattern is the key. It is not one date. It is a sequence, layers of mineral history stacked inside the rock, like rings inside a tree. And that sequence changes depending on which patch of bedrock the stone came from. No 2 bedrock formations on Earth produce the exact same sequence of ages. Get enough grains, and the rock can only have come from one place. Researchers took the altar stone's grain age signature and ran it against known bedrock formations across Britain. Not a handful of options. Hundreds of possible sources, one by one, checked against the sequence locked inside those grains, looking for a fingerprint that lined up exactly. Most came back as clear misses. Then one did not. The match came back to the Orcadian Basin, a sandstone formation in northeastern Scotland, laid down hundreds of millions of years ago in ancient lake beds. Nowhere near Wales, nowhere near the story that had stood since 1923. But the researchers were not setting out to overturn Herbert Thomas. They were running a routine confirmation, expecting the numbers to fall into the range that pointed back to Wales, the same range every other stone at the site had pointed to for 100 years. Instead, the numbers landed hundreds of kilometers off the map they had been using. That is the moment 100 years of accepted geology stopped being accepted. Here is the distance, plainly. 750 kilometers. Roughly 5 times farther than the bluestones traveled from the Preseli Hills. The bluestone journey alone had always been treated as remarkable, a feat scholars argued over for a century. This one dwarfs it, and it had been sitting in the middle of the monument the entire time, filed under the wrong country. A geological conclusion that stood unchallenged for over 100 years got overturned by a single test, run on a single stone, that nobody had bothered to run before. Not because the science was hard, because nobody asked the question. Here is what makes this significant. This is not just a rock with the wrong country attached to it. It is proof that an entire field accepted an answer nobody had actually checked for 100 years, on the one stone sitting at the exact geometric center of the most studied prehistoric monument in the world. 100 years of textbooks repeating a claim that was never independently confirmed for this specific stone. Now, here is where the evidence becomes harder to explain. If the origin was wrong for a century, and the real source sits 750 kilometers away across some of the roughest terrain and coastline in Britain, the next question is not academic anymore. It is physical. How does anyone move something that size, that far, using tools we know existed 4,500 years ago? 2 routes, no good answer. Start with what the builders did not have. No wheels built to carry 6 tons across open ground. No draft animals bred or trained for that kind of pull. No metal tools, no iron chain, no steel cable, just rope, wood, muscle, and whatever the land and sea gave them. Against that toolkit, 750 kilometers is not a long walk. It is closer to an engineering problem nobody has ever solved, and the 2 routes on the table each carry a different kind of impossible. One route puts the stone on the water, boats moving it up and around the coastline, riding tides instead of fighting hills. Several researchers on the study itself lean toward this version, and their reasoning is simple. The overland route through Scotland runs straight through some of the highest, most broken ground in Britain. Dragging a 6-ton slab over that kind of terrain is not just hard. For a lot of these researchers, it is close to impossible with the tools on hand. But the water route asks for its own leap. It means building a vessel that can carry 6 tons of dead weight without capsizing, launching that vessel from an exposed coastline, and keeping it afloat through open water for a stretch measured in hundreds of kilometers, not a short hop between 2 points on a map. The other route keeps the stone on land the whole way. Sledges, log rollers, teams of people hauling rope over hundreds of miles. This is the traditional model, and it is still defended by archaeologists who point to something concrete. Neolithic Britain already moved the bluestones over land, out of Wales, before this discovery ever surfaced. If they did it once, the argument goes, they could do it again, just farther. But farther here means crossing rivers with no bridges, terrain with no roads, and distance with no resupply chain we have ever found evidence of. 140 miles from Wales is a hard pull. 750 kilometers from Scotland, over ground that includes some of the steepest and wettest terrain in the country, is a different category of problem entirely. Neither theory gets to claim the easy win. The sea route needs boats built to survive open water, carrying multi-ton cargo, holding together through currents and weather over hundreds of kilometers. The land route needs a path across some of the roughest, most unforgiving ground in the country, sustained for a distance nobody has fully mapped. Pick either one, and you are picking a version of Neolithic Britain that had to plan on a scale we have not given it credit for. Here is what makes this significant. Both routes demand coordination across long distances. Both demand people organizing labor, resources, and timing across a stretch of land or sea that does not just cross a county. It crosses what would later become the border between two countries. That kind of planning does not fit the picture of scattered Neolithic communities working in isolation, each one handling its own patch of ground and never talking to the next valley over. Somebody was coordinating something that stretched across a huge amount of ground in a period we do not usually associate with that kind of reach. Whichever route you pick, boats or sledges, you need people who can plan a journey lasting months, feed a crew or a hauling team for that entire stretch, and hold that plan together across a distance no other confirmed Neolithic project in Britain comes close to matching. But there is a gap. No wreck sits on the seafloor to confirm the boats. No sledge track cuts through Scottish or English ground to confirm the land route. No marker, no depot, no abandoned stone along either path has ever turned up. Everything you just heard is built from geology and logic, not from a single piece of physical proof showing the actual journey. The rock's origin is settled science. The road it traveled is still empty paper. The stone got there, 6 tons of it, sitting at the center of Stonehenge right now. The record does not say how. Conclusion: the file stays open. One test on one stone overturned 100 years of accepted geology. That is the real shock in this case, not a footnote before the ending. Herbert Thomas's answer held for a century because nobody checked it. The 2024 team checked it, and the ground shifted. But there was a problem. That confirmation only opens the harder question. Here is what makes this significant. The stone still hasn't told us how it traveled 750 kilometers across ancient Britain. 2 routes exist. No proof supports either. One rock that is not going anywhere. If you want more evidence-first breakdowns like this, subscribe. New cases go up regularly. The file stays open.